Hello YouTube, how's it going? So I beat the Callisto protocol. It took me all night. I am tired, my hair's disheveled, but I'm going to get the review out because it's fresh in my mind. So the Callisto protocol, is it good? I think it's a decent game. Now, I know a lot of people are going to come into here, especially people like me who are fans of Dead Space, expecting that level of quality. And while there is quality here, it is not a AAA game in the sense, even though they're charging AAA prices. I would say this is more of a AA experience, like something out of Focus Home Interactive. Yes, the visual design is very well done, but this game does fall short with mechanics that were introduced all the way back in Dead Space 1. They don't have that EA levels of money. Even though they slashed their budget for Dead Space 3, that game still had, I would assume, a bigger budget than this game. Now, it is decent for what we get here. It's more in the line of action horror. I wouldn't say it is survival horror. You definitely have limited resources, you can craft items, you can level up, but it's more leaning on the side, I would say, Resident Evil 4 professional difficulty. The game is challenging, but in the sense that it's kind of in the way of how the game presents itself gameplay wise. I'll get more into that later, but let's talk about the story. So what's the story here? You play as Jacob. Jacob is just a transporter. He was sent on a mission to transport some goods that may or may not be illegal. His ship gets ambushed, crashes on the planet, and then he is placed into a prison against his will. And then when he wakes up next time, he finds out the entire prison has been infected with this biological virus that's mutating people into brutes that attack anything that isn't mutated. Now, the narrative follows your classic secret organizations, deadly plots, terrorist organizations, stuff like that. It's not that predictable in the sense that you will see some things come in, but at the same time, they present it in a way that's at least refreshing, in the sense that they at least take it seriously. They don't try to spin it off as like the person is too dumb or the story is too cliche. Jacob does have a good head on his shoulders, but at the same time, he's just an everyman. Like, everyone in the story is portrayed to be just ordinary, and I really like that type of storytelling where the character isn't supposed to be someone special. Yeah, they're doing special things because you're playing as them as the protagonist, but overall, they're just meant to be ordinary people placed in unrealistic or just wrong place, wrong time situations. And Jacob is a decent character. The voice acting is very well done. Animation is very great, and overall, I have no problems with the story for what we were given. It's okay for what it was. Now, it's clear that a lot of people, again, are going to play this game because Dead Space. And while there are elements of this game that resemble that, the large focus of this game is melee combat. So let's get into the gameplay. A major focus of the game is hand-to-hand combat, and the best game I can compare this to is The Last of Us Part 2 with its melee combat. You can dodge left and right, and you're going to have to do this a lot in order to avoid enemy attacks. Jacob is very slow. In terms of movement, I would compare him to Isaac Clarke from Dead Space 1 as opposed to 2 and 3 where they made him a lot more nimble. Jacob definitely has a lot of weight on his shoulders. He's over, I would assume, over 200 pounds, and you definitely feel that weight. So when you get into a fight, you really get into a fight, and they don't skimp on the gore and the blood, the decapitations, the death animations. This game is a very bloody game. There is a reason this game was banned in Japan. They do not sugarcoat anything in this game. You see jaws, you see muscle, you see bone, and the death animations are quite gruesome. Like, I've played a lot of survival horror games, but they really went above and beyond with this. I would say it's a combination of Tomb Raider and, again, Dead Space in terms of how graphic they get into the death animations, where you see the character fighting. They're trying to fight, but at the same time knowing that they're going to die. So it is a brilliant system, but at the same time, it does have its flaws. For one thing, it works on one-on-one fights, but when you start to put in 2 or 3 enemies, which you might encounter if you are later on into the game, if you choose not to do stealth, I'll get more into stealth, you're going to fight enemies in bulks, and they try to make it where you have to isolate enemies, but there are situations where Jacob simply will not run. There are like moments where the floor is too sticky, I assume, and he just doesn't run, which is a very poor system. I think he should have full mobility. At the same time, they also have these very annoying moments where you are forced to walk Gears of War style through a specific section. I really hate those moments, and they are present here too many times. You definitely don't feel like you have full control of Jacob, and he constantly just stops. I don't know if it's a technical issue, but the run-in system is just very poor. But you're going to focus a lot on melee combat, and you get at first a pickaxe, then you get a stun baton. Both of them do the same levels of damage, and you just press the right trigger in order to swing your weapon while you dodge incoming blows, like a game of Street Fighter. For some reason, block is when you push back on the joystick, which I don't get why that's block, because I mean it would have been more ideal to put it as one of the face buttons, but I don't know, maybe they tried it and it didn't work. It's just such an awkward system because sometimes I would even forget that I'm blocking. You can upgrade your character with the money. You find money throughout the environment, and the money you find usually includes like special treasures. But for some reason, there is no option to just sell your special treasures. I didn't even know these were like very specific because some of them are marked with a diamond and some of them are not. So I thought it would have been ideal just to mark all of them as treasure and just say, hey, just sell all to make it more convenient. But then use the credits in order to buy upgrades for not only Jacob's baton weapon, but also his various weapons, build new weapons, and you can just, upgrade Jacob that way. You can't upgrade his core abilities. There's only 2 sets of health meters. One when he has no armor, and then the second part of the game when he gets armor. So there's no way to upgrade Jacob's core abilities, just his weapons and his stun baton. Now you do get a decent array of weapons. You get a pistol, shotgun, assault rifle, and you don't have to get these weapons. You can get them at any time. You get the 3D printer basically serves as the store where you get all your items, and then once you do that, you just basically choose which you want. And if you don't 3D print a weapon, you don't get any ammo for that weapon, so you don't have to worry about what types of ammo you're going to get. Whatever weapon you have equipped, you're going to have that type of ammo. Now, I do have to say, this is one of the most stupid weapon swap systems I can think of. You have to press on the Xbox Series X, where I played this game, you have to press right on the D-pad, select it, and then press A. I don't know who thought that was a good system, but that is stupid. It is genuinely dumb. It should just be like you press right and you select the weapon that you want based on the cycle. You shouldn't have to click another button. But yeah, in terms of the interface is very good. It's just like Dead Space. Your health and your energy meter is displayed on the back of Jacob's neck. It's not as highlighted as Isaac's health system, but it works. I never had any issue with it. I'm sure someone who's more nearsighted might have a problem with it, but for me, I had no problem with it. Now, you do have a Kinesis mod in this game. I think it's called Bar or Grab. I don't know, GAR. I don't know. It's just basically the same thing, but it's so overpowered in this game that you have to put an energy meter in this game. Whereas in Dead Space, you could just spam it all you want and use that as a way to just save ammo. Here, they had to reduce it because there's so much environmental hazards, and you're encouraged to use them in order to take care of enemies, and you can literally just grab enemies and throw them like they're softballs, especially when you upgrade it where you can just toss them. There have been situations where I would just grab the enemy, toss them out of bounds, and they're dead. That's it. No problem. But yeah, so they had to reduce it using a battery system, and it's decently balanced. You have to use an array of different weapons and abilities in order to make sure you can conserve as many items later on, because Jacob has very light pockets. He does get an upgrade once halfway through the game with his health meter. He gets a suit of armor, which increases his health and the amount of items he can pick up. But during the first half of the game, you really have to stretch your resources, especially when you go against the more bullet sponge enemies. Now, the game does have this really cool system where they combine melee and shooting, where basically if you hit an enemy multiple times to stun them, you can pull off a quick shot that does, I assume, extra damage. And it's really well done. I think it's very fast-paced, and if they built on that, it could have been a very cool system. But eventually, it just starts to bog down, and you start to do the same thing against the same array of enemies. Not saying the enemy variety isn't healthy. It is a healthy system, and the enemies look brilliant. These are some really grotesque creatures. So yeah, I don't think that the combat will last long in terms of its thrill factor. Now, stealth is an option, but I rarely used it unless I really had to. The game does have this type of artificial difficulty system where they just hurl enemies at you. At some point, they hurl so many of them that, yeah, you just use stealth so you don't have to deal with so many of them and just stealth kill them. Eventually, you encounter, the cliche blind enemies, and you just have to walk by them or stealth kill them. But stealth is just very annoying. Jacob walks at the speed of, I would say, Sebastian from The Evil Within 1, not The Evil Within 2. And since there's no way to upgrade it, you just move so slowly that you're just like, oh my god, can you please move faster? But of course he cannot. But overall, as taken as a whole, the gameplay system is pretty good. Lastly, you do have different areas where you can explore the environment. Now, the game doesn't have a mapping system, at least I didn't see any mapping system, and there's no highlighter to target which area you're supposed to go to. You're just supposed to kind of figure it out. The problem with this is that it kind of makes you wonder whether an area is optional or not. I've been in several areas where I was just like, am I supposed to go here or there? And since the game doesn't do a good job of portraying where you have to go, you can end up missing out on optional content. There are lore documents, and they basically just dictate what happened during the whole outbreak. There's a section in the map where you'll find an entire hidden area, and it does open up a whole new dialogue of what the people going through. I think these diaries are really well done, and I like these types of entries where you get to learn about different characters. They have their own subplots similar to Bioshock 2 or Prototype. But yeah, sometimes you would just lose that type of exploration element because you don't know whether you're supposed to go this area for the story or this area is optional. Now, the game's presentation and visual design is very well done. Like, they really put a lot of their budget into how this game looks. It's like one of those tech demos where those elaborate thumbnails of super cool mech soldiers. Overall, it is a very beautiful game. The problem is the frame rate. The frame rate is problematic. Now, on PC, a lot of players were reporting even more issues, but I played on Series X. The opening scene doesn't do the game well. It doesn't have a really good first impression because of that frame rate issue. At first you think, oh no, it just stumbled a few times, but no, it drops to 15 frames per second several times. Now, after the first hour, the game does become a lot more stable because at least 90% of the game is within closed environments. It's mostly a linear game with very isolated areas, so the game tends to perform much better there. But when you get into the wide open areas, like when you go outside or when there's like flames, for some reason the flames look like they were from PlayStation 3. I don't know why, but yeah, that's why I said this game is kind of a AA game, because on top of like the repetitive gameplay elements and the poor technical quality of certain elements of the game, yeah, it definitely shows that a lot of the budget went into the presentation, the visual design, the cinematography, the effects, and the character models, all of which look fantastic. But they definitely need to stabilize this game, maybe in a few patches, and definitely focus on that. The only last issue I would say about the game is that it kind of leaves you underwhelmed. Like, I know this is a spoiler-free review, but don't expect that much from the game's finale. It's clear that they are trying to set something up here because, it is a spiritual successor. I mean, it's pretty obvious from the game that this isn't just going to be an isolated game. They want to put something bigger onto this, and I think they do have something special here. If they can build on this, they can make something great. It kind of reminds me a lot of A Plague Tale: Innocence, where you have something small and you nurture that, and it can become something big, like a Plague Tale Requiem. So I honestly think this game just has so much potential that it could grow into its own entity instead of just being the spiritual successor to Dead Space, which I would disagree about now that I've played through the entire game. Overall, I would say that it's definitely worth it if you are an action horror fan. If you like games like Resident Evil 4, 5, and Village, you'll probably like this game a lot. But again, you have to deal with a lot of things that aren't exactly the most ideal. The melee combat You're going to have to get used to that. It's not going to be an easy journey. Again, I came from The Last of Us Part 2, so I was able to adapt to it pretty quickly, but if you've never played that game, it's going to be hellish during the first couple of hours with this game because you're going to have to learn that or you are going to die a lot unless you want to see those great death animations, which are pretty awesome. Either way, the Callisto Protocol. Good game, not the greatest, but definitely a decent horror game. So, highly recommended if you're willing to take some liberties. So, if you like the video, like it. If you dislike it, dislike it. Patreon, thanks button, all that stuff. Thank you for watching. I know your time is valuable. I'll see you all next time.